Well, let's talk about one last discovery, the Amarna Letters, an incredible discovery of diplomatic correspondences. What do they tell us, and is there anything in them that connects to the biblical account?
Yeah, the Amarna Letters are pretty famous. They're called that because they were discovered at the site of Amarna, which was the new capital of Akhenaten. And there were 382 letters that were recovered. Some of them were broken in transit when they were found by this local peasant, but that's what we've got right now. And they are essentially the royal archive of the Pharaoh, letters from these other kings outside of Egypt, some big kings, some small kings. And within that group, there are a lot of letters from the Canaanite kings. So what the book of Joshua calls things like, the king of Hatzor, the king of Lachish, the king of Jerusalem, and so forth. They're usually referred to as mayors in the context of the Amarna letters because they're just kings of a city, a city state, rather than a nation. But it's the same idea. And within these letters, you have all sorts of complaints that this group of people that they call the Habiru have come into their land, and they're making war, and they're taking the cities of the king. And they keep asking the Egyptian Pharaoh for help, to send troops, send the Egyptian archers. Otherwise, all of Canaan is going to be lost. And they ask and they ask and they ask. They just keep asking, and it never happens. The Egyptians never send troops. So the question is, do these have a relation to the Israelite conquest under Joshua? All right, so first of all, when were these written? Now, the Amarna letters, they're not all from the time of one king or one pharaoh. A lot of them are from the time of Amenhotep III. Some are from Akhenaten. Some probably from Smenkhare and Tut. There's one letter, maybe even from Thutmose IV. But the Amenhotep III ones are the ones that we're concerned with, because here's where we got a lot of complaints from the Canaanites. And Amenhotep III, his reign began prior to 1400 BC, and then goes a little bit into the early 14th century. So from a biblical chronology standpoint, he is the pharaoh we would expect to be in power during the conquest by Joshua. And so it's to him that these letters are being written, asking for these troops to support them. And it's from pharaoh, or from kings like the king of Jerusalem and the king of Gezer. And they talk about the king of Lachish being killed by the Habiru, or actually by allies. And the king of Hatzor writes letters as well. And then there's this whole thing with Shechem too. So it's a bunch of cities that are at war with the Israelites under Joshua, and the same people are getting defeated and killed. Like the king of Lachish gets killed. Shechem, I think, is very important because it is not conquered in the biblical record. So in Joshua, there's no narrative about Shechem being attacked and conquered. It's not in the list of all the 31 kings Joshua destroys in Canaan. And yet they show up there peacefully. They read the law with all the people. It says with the native as well as the stranger. And so there's some peaceful resolution. Well, in the Amarna letters, the other Canaanites accuse the king of Shechem of giving his land to the Habiru. So it sounds like he just gave it to the Habiru. So who are the Habiru? A lot of discussion about this immediately after these letters were found and started to be read, because it sounds so much like Hebrew. Now, I wouldn't say that the two terms are equal. I wouldn't say Hebrew equals Habiru, or I wouldn't say Habiru equals Israelite, because we have instances of Habiru who are clearly not Hebrew or clearly not Israelite, but it does describe them. They are these outsiders. They are this roving band of violent people, from the Canaanite perspective, of course. And so it definitely fits the Israelites during that time. They're doing the same thing in the same places at the same time. wars, treaties. There's an interesting correlation or correspondence with the king of Hatzor and accusations towards him as well that I think can connect to the biblical text. So I would say that some of those letters, many of them actually, are the letters from the Canaanite kings who were involved in the conquest under Joshua to the Egyptians to ask for help. But there's an important point that the Egyptian help never comes. Why? Their army was destroyed, wiped out when they chased the Israelites into the sea. And second, we see in the Joshua conquest, there's no Egyptians who ever enter into the mix there. They don't fight the Israelites. So we shouldn't expect the Egyptians to come, and they never do, according to the Amarna Letters. So I think, again, another archaeological discovery, a set of documents that strongly corroborate the biblical conquest.
Excellent. So we've looked at the biblical account of the dating of the Exodus to 1446. We've looked at the evidence for the Pharaoh of the Exodus, Amenhotep II, that fits nicely with the 1446 Exodus account. We've looked at the archaeological evidence for the Exodus itself and the Hebrew people living in Egypt and then in the wilderness and then the conquest, right? So all of this, lots of great archaeological evidence that supports the biblical account, not contradicts it.